me not being able to understand from that perspective what's happening. I started cutting myself, self-inflicting injuries, because it was the only form of tension release. I had a lot of anger. I could absorb everyone's anger around me, and I was like, ooh, like a big mountain exploding.
But then they had a 5-minute meditation, just focus on your fear. And I didn't think I had any fear, but I focused, and then they said, imagine somebody's trying to kill you or kidnap you, and that didn't work for me. But all of a sudden, a memory of a scuba diving accident I had just 2 months earlier, where I lost my weight belt about 30 meters below and went shooting to the surface, that came up. And then I felt this punch in my chest, and I started to cry, and I really started to feel this fear that I had completely blocked off.
It was like a dam that was just waiting to explode because I wasn't in touch with that side of myself at all.
I remember traveling in the car with my husband, and suddenly a huge rush of energy came through my hands and my feet. And I never felt energy before. And it lasted 3 days, and on the 3rd day, I was going through an experience. Later I understood it was a Kundalini awakening experience.
But for most of us, we're having these kind of Kundalini experiences, and we're going through hell because we don't have a cultural context for it. We don't know what it is. We don't know how to manage it. And this system seems to be trying to work through blockages that are in that bioenergetic system. It's like the Kundalini intelligence is trying to work through these blockages. And those blockages are caused by some sorts of trauma in the broadest sense of the word trauma.
Many people report how these experiences can become unmanageable and lead to the need for crisis support. They can be isolating, terrifying, confusing, and there can be a vital need for safety and understanding.
In terms of experiencing deep emptiness, deep bliss, deep peace, became out of control in a way that I started to lose my sense of who I was completely, and thought that maybe I died, or had a psychotic break, or was in a kind of manic episodes, because my moods and experiences would swing so much from really, really high to really, really low as well. So I was really scared at the time that those kind of experiences could be, pathologized, or I might end up having to, be in a mental institute for a while or something like that.
I experienced hearing voices and seeing spirits that were with people that other people didn't see. And I was labeled with mental illness. I was hospitalized on several occasions, and I was put on tons of different medication. The Western world, the medical world, didn't understand what was happening with me.
I would also start having visions. I would see angels and God and devil, and it became extremely intense to the point when I couldn't function anymore, and I got very deeply depressed. And that's when I sought help in psychiatry. And soon after that I got diagnosed with mental illness. And because of it, I was heavily medicated with antipsychotics, antidepressants, all possible pills out there really. And it got me very unhappy. My energy was very low, and I lost 1 year of my life because I would just isolate myself. I wouldn't go out because I was so scared of what was going on with me, and because it was so negatively labeled.
It would be possibly considered to be a psychedelic-induced psychotic disorder rather than schizophrenia. Or it could be considered a brief psychotic disorder. It doesn't meet all the criteria of the current DSM for schizophrenia, but it certainly would meet the criteria for some form of psychotic disorder. So I'm aware of that, and yet I'm also aware of my spiritual awakening.
Now, for me, when I had my spiritual emergence, a lot of it was extreme to the point of being diagnosable.
Yeah.
I had gone that route.
Yeah.
And I sought out different avenues of assistance because I wanted to understand what was happening to me, including meeting with a psychiatrist and having these discussions. And that really, unfortunately, the way I see it, if I had not known about my brother, if I had gone that route, it would have actually made me have a disorder that I didn't have. But because I knew the kind of damage that it could cause because of my brother's experience, I just refused to accept that.
Why is there so much fear around these experiences being labelled as mental illness? And what are the potential problems with doing this?
Yes, I've been through a spiritual awakening. I recognized it as such immediately. The hospital that I was taken to didn't quite recognize that as such. They drugged me heavily, even though I was very much willing to get help and sought it, and sort of abruptly took me from my home and traumatized me and my family. Spiritual awakenings shouldn't be a traumatizing or shameful event.
I felt like I could control time and space. And I felt the divine intelligence within me, giving me the gift of knowing and understanding the universe. I felt like I was a part of this universe. It was amazing and magical and sacred. When I got put in the hospital, I felt spiritually raped of being in touch with my soul. I felt so lost, and because the doctor diagnosed me without hearing my point of view, I had lost my voice.
Persons that experience any kind of violations of their rights and agencies, that's a trauma.
Yeah.
I mean, refugees or migrants that, I focus on primarily when they're going through that process, when they're in the camps, when they're rejected from society, when they're mistreated and not valued in their dignity, are traumatized.
When I picked up Groff's book, The Storm Research for the Self, and I read about spiritual emergency, I was like, well, this is it. Everything that was in that book was what happened to me.
I did find people who did understand what I was going through and the way that I interpreted my experiences. I also discovered Stanislav Grof and his work, and I read a lot of his books. This really helped me to move forward, and I feel that now that process of integration is pretty much done. I feel on a daily basis connected to my soul, and I really trust that.
A psychologist who had been formerly a monk, he was in his 60s, in the 80s, had been a monk in India, a sort of a mendicant wandering around India. He'd been very close working with Krishnamurti, and a real knowledgeable person. He knew a lot about Jung and all sorts of manner of stuff. And over the 2 and a bit years that I saw him 3 times, and he gave me a gift, an absolute gift, because he said, he recognized what was happening. He said, Mick, if you can tolerate this, you're having an awakening, and you're going to have to, this is going to be something you're going to have to go through. And I think that his kindness was something that was really key for me, because actually being validated is one thing, but to be in a space with somebody who's just looking at you with genuine care and compassion and kindness, who isn't saying, I think you're ill or sick, who's saying, treat this really carefully, but actually you're going to have to go through it. The only way is through.
When the second anniversary of my spiritual emergence came, my husband finally asked me what happened. I was excited to share my point of view. After I explained my experience, as I just explained to you here, he questioned, I wonder if in the future they'll find out that bipolar disorder is the mind's way of coming to a new stage of enlightenment. This resonated with me on a deep, deep level. You see, the experience left me fundamentally transformed in a positive way. I felt like it was a puberty of the soul, a metamorphosis into a butterfly. Only the stigma, the shame from the stigma behind the mental health diagnosis kept my wings quite wet for some time.
I had to learn to deny my experience to the healthcare professionals, deny something that honestly you and I both know, really, if we're allowed to embrace those experiences, embrace that near-death experience or that non-ordinary experience that someone else has and talk about it, that is the most incredible tool of healing.
This is very important to normalize experiences, to celebrate the value of them, and to give a voice to all the people like myself who experience things and go through challenges of trying to explain them to other people, finding community where we can share and navigate our journeys, and to bring forth the benefits of these experiences.
With guidance, it can be much more easier. The period of time can be shorter, because when you have someone beside you that understands you and validates you and say, oh, don't worry, you are okay, you're not losing everything, you're just transforming yourself and it will be okay. You can relax. Yeah. And the biggest transformation it is when you are deeply relaxed and you just allow the process to happen.
I was very lucky in that I had friends who just let me crash with them. I hitchhiked back to Chicago and then back to the Boston area where I had friends. And for the next 2 months, I crashed on their living room couches. They fed me. I didn't work. I didn't have money. And so I never ended up in the streets. I never ended up hospitalized, medicated, and was able to go through this entire experience as an inner journey. That's how Joseph Campbell talks about it, as an inner hero's journey. And I was able to emerge at the other end 2 months later, kind of with both feet on the ground.
Now, all I needed around me was a sense of trust, and people who got that what I was experiencing was actually a spiritual experience, but that maybe there wasn't enough context or containment around me and within me to be able to deal with it effectively at the time.
What makes people not just happy but healthy as well is the quality of the human relationships they are having. And I think we keep talking about the peer support element of, when you're helping people, how important is that? The community and the relationships and how you are perceived by those people around you. Basically, I think they're just your life.
I had a lot of help. I mean, this is once I was able to find that community, that's the number one thing. Once I was able to connect with people and find the different tools and methods, meeting with a transpersonal psychologist, doing holotropic breath work, different methods, learning about it, reading about it, talking to people, connecting, experiencing, doing artwork when I needed to, whatever was available.
And I had a whole new budding relationship with nature, with yoga. I had an open dialogue with these voices. And I was able to get a sense of what was positive and what was negative for me. And I truly had to get to the point where I had faith and confidence in my abilities. And then realized that I wasn't crazy, but instead I just had a rare experience that not everybody could understand.
The first thing that needed to happen for me was I needed to get angry. I had so much rage inside about what had been done to me and what had been done to my parents. And I didn't even know I could be angry about that. I had turned it inward into hatred and internalized stigma or whatever the hell you want to call it, right? It was so important for me to get really angry, which is also not okay in the mental health system, right?
Luckily, I had journaled and painted and drew through the entire 4 months that I had been hospitalized 3 times. And I could go back into it and, over a few years, integrate these past traumas and thoughts and emotions.
While I was in that institution, separated from my nursing baby and my other 2 children and my husband, I was basically a mute for the first few days, just completely lost. But I was able to take an art therapy class, and that was sort of the way that all my senses sort of returned to me. And I was able to make this beautiful mask with different colored wools and paint. And we were supposed to make a mask that represented us. And what I ended up doing was making a mask that represented everyone in the world, because in my state, that's how I felt.
I myself questioned the authority of my psychiatrist, and so I was able to break out of the mental illness paradigm. So mystics right now, many of us are being treated as delusional or demonic. And then when we get put on these drugs, we're basically becoming prescription drug addicts. It takes a lot of hard work to overcome traumas and to emerge as butterflies, so to speak. I think we have to work on a multi-dimensional level, and there are many alternatives that can help people to break free, such as holotropic breath work and shamanic journeying, for instance.
None of what I say now, in terms of what I've experienced, is to blame anyone, but perhaps to point out that the system could be better. There could be some improvements to the system. Had some of it changed, and I actually received